After the revolution, people are complaining that the army is battling hard to secure its own interests and is not looking after the broader interests of the country. Just a reminder, those are the views coming to you now from Tahrir Square. A million-man march is planned for tomorrow, this after 3 days of violence in which at least 35 people have lost their lives. So just a reminder of who our guests are tonight. Myra Mahdi is an Egyptian author and a researcher as well. Professor Hall Gardner is from the American University in Paris. In Cairo, Heba Fatma Moraef is from Human Rights Watch. Alfred Rauf is an activist. And we're also joined by our very own François Picard, who is in Cairo covering that story for us. François, we're expecting a major rally to take place tomorrow. There must be fears of more violence.
Well, the violence has been continuing. Laura Baines, I'm standing right now on the entrance to the square that comes from the Cairo Antiquities Museum, and a huge gathering once again. This is the third night, and it was quite impressive to see when the sun started to set. The throngs of people coming out of the metro, people coming out of work and getting over to Tahrir Square. And it's all people from all sorts of walks of life. And you're right, Laura, it is a lot like it was 9-10 months ago. And what observers are telling me here is they've noticed how a lot of the defiants, the people there, are more battle-hardened than before, and very defiant when it comes to challenging the police, cat and mouse game, as they approach the Interior Ministry and throw rocks and receive tear gas canisters.
Now, the difference this time around, François, is that 9-10 months ago, the message was very clear. It was Mubarak out. This time, though, it's a bit more complicated, isn't it?
Actually, Laura, the message is very clear, the one that we're getting on the square. It's out with Field Marshal Tantawi and the rest of the Supreme Command of the Armed Forces. They say whether or not the elections happen is another issue. Even those in the square who believe that the elections process is flawed still want to see that process go ahead. But what they say is that what they're here about is to get the generals out. They feel as though Mubarak hasn't really left with all of his chiefs of staff still calling the shots, and especially, Laura, with provisions that they want to insert in the new rules that would allow them to have a discretionary budget, basically to help shape the Constitution.
Now, this is a complete turnaround, isn't it? Because they were hailed as heroes following the revolution when they refused to fire on protesters. How have the army so spectacularly squandered all that public trust?
If you're still there, I cannot hear you anymore.
Apologies, we've lost François. We're having a few technical problems there. Let's go back to our activist then. I think Alfred Rauf is still with us on the line, also in Cairo.
Yes, I just would like to mention quickly before I get back to what I was talking about that there is almost sure news that the government has stepped down, or actually they resigned, and we're not sure whether the SCAF will actually accept their resignation or not. But it seems like they are gone, the old government. I think this is one step ahead, but this is not going to be enough to get the people back from the square. What we need now is a government that is formed from the various political parties, the various political powers, that has actually absolute power.
Yeah, you're right.
To do whatever they want.
Right, Alfred. There's news coming in now that the Egyptian cabinet has submitted its resignation entirely to the ruling army council. I wonder if we can get François Picard back with us now. No, we can't get François Picard. So let's go back to you, Alfred. We are hearing that has been confirmed. Yes. What does that mean now?
Well, yesterday, two of the presidential candidates actually came out on TV and said that they are somehow in agreement to give up being candidates and actually form together a new government. And this is Dr. Al-Baradei and Abu al-Futuh. They are two of the well, they represent the Islamists and the liberals as well somehow. I think together they can maybe form some sort of government that will be able to take the country from the the state that it's at now into a better place where we can have democracy in the forming. The fact is, whether the SCAF will give them enough power to do that or not, I can assure you that El Baradei will not accept to be the head of a cabinet unless he is very sure that he has enough power to do what he wants to do. And if he will not be allowed, he will come out on TV and he will say, I'm stepping down, I'm not taking enough power. So I hope this scenario goes forward, because this is, I think, the only way out of the current situation. One last...
Sorry, Alfred, carry on.
Yes. Some people see the last 9 months as something that is really bad for Egypt. But to be honest, I think this gave all the political powers that have never cared about working with politics before during the Mubarak regime some time to form political parties. Maybe not strong, but at least there is a structure now. So I think somehow it worked for the best of the civil powers.
All right, let's go back to François Picard for his reaction then to that news. François, we've got news coming to us that the entire cabinet has submitted its resignation to SCAF. What does that mean and what might happen now?
That's according to one source speaking to the Reuters news agency. That is not confirmed on my end so far. I'm standing right now more in the center of Tahrir Square, where they have one of these makeshift field hospitals. The mood we've been getting here is that the people here are ready to sit it out for the duration. Very determined inside the square. They've set up the makeshift tents. They've set up on the other end of the square hospitals, including even a surgical ward of sorts, a makeshift one. So they're bringing food in. There's calls over social networks to help feed people. They're ready to camp out. The people we saw when we got very close to where the standoff is on one of the side streets leading to the Interior Ministry, the mood here was very defiant. We know that the Culture Minister submitted his resignation. We got that word in. That was confirmed to us earlier. So it's an interesting situation that's developing, Catherine, with the wonder. Many inside the opposition claiming that the military wants a sort of a Pakistan situation where even if you have an elected president and an elected parliament, that the army can continue to act autonomously. It'd be great to hear from the army. We've tried several times to reach official spokesmen, and so far they're not commenting to us, at least.
All right, François. Many thanks indeed, François Picard there. And I can tell you now that Egyptian state television is broadcasting that news that the cabinet has submitted its resignation in its entirety to the SCAF forces. That's the military council. Things now are in a more volatile situation than ever.
Well, I think I'm hoping that behind the scenes, the United States and European Union are putting more pressure on the military to ease the transition. Remember, the United States gives about $1.3 billion in military aid and about $3 billion in economic assistance, which the military has been feeding off for quite a while, since Nasser. So the problem is Americans can't be seen as really publicly doing this. They have to be behind the scenes, and I'm hoping that's part of the reason why the cabinet's resigned and the military is about to get a shakeup, but it's not absolutely clear. And of course, any time a transition like this occurs, there's little jokers that pop up, and somebody who was a former person in security will come in. Nobody will know who it is, but it'll be working for somebody else who's behind the scenes. So there can be games still played for quite a while. But if the process goes on, and I think the most important thing that's said tonight is if there really is a democratic structure being put in place, this will put pressure on the military to step back, because they'll have to start making the decisions, and the military will have to say, oh, that's not our affair, you handle that. And if that really goes forward, then there's real hope at the end of the tunnel here.
Myra Mardi, what's your reaction to that? If it is confirmed, it looks like the entire cabinet's just quit.
It was the only honourable thing for them to do. I mean, the Egyptian people could not accept that Egyptian people would sit down and make as if of nothing with people killed in the streets. It was already, to me, much too late. They should have done that just after Maspero. The Maspero affair was horrible, and nobody in Egypt considered anybody as as you would say, Ragel, a man, accepting such a behavior, not in Egypt. So it's about time they resigned. If true, that's fine. It doesn't solve the problem. Now, if Baradei and a coalition of people form an interim government of sorts, and if they're not given enough power by the SCAF, what's going to happen? All right, we'll see Baradei on television saying, I don't have enough power, I step down. So they'll put somebody else who doesn't have the courage to come in front of the television and tell us that. The problem is the SCAF. The problem remains the SCAF.
All right, let's have a look at a visual we've got for you, a graphic, which just shows you, I think, just how fragmented the political system in Egypt is at the moment. It's a little bit complicated. Let me explain. You can see the countries at the top are religious parties and Islamist parties, of course, like the Muslim Brotherhood, and then the blue parties are the centre and the liberal parties led by people like Mohammed el-Baradei. On the right wing there, on the black, that's the NDP, that's the former party of Hosni Mubarak, and then you've got lots of other parties there as well. Alfred, Ralph, it is a very complicated system. First of all, do you think the elections will go ahead next week? And then secondly, do you think these many political parties can actually work together for the good of the country?
To be honest, I have doubt that the election will take place. I assume there's a chance, but it's a very... The fact is, to be honest, I could not see the next election as free, democratic election rule on SCAF. There's SCAF overlooking. That's the first. Second thing, you cannot have a democratic election while you don't have enough strong alternatives. The only political power on the scene that had any sort of structure was the Muslim Brothers. That's why they are expected to win a lot of seats, which does not exactly reflect the political spectrum in Egypt amongst people, but rather shows how structured and how organized. So it's very difficult, but I think today, I know from one of the active friends that there has been a meeting between the Muslim Brothers and political powers, the other political powers. They are working together now to form some sort of government that could be an interim government that will include the whole spectrum of the parties. Not sure yet whether they have reached that or not.
All right.
But I think they're working on it.
Alfred, unfortunately, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you. Holgarda, when you look at what's happened in Libya, what's happened in Tunisia and these other countries that have undergone revolutions, if you like, are you encouraged by that, or and how do you think, which way might Egypt go?
You look at the Nada party in Tunisia getting 40%. You look at the Muslim elements in Libya. The Muslim Brotherhood's expected on the low figure is 12%, on the high is 40-something%, and the average is probably 31% of the vote. So it may be form a solid bloc like the Nada party in Tunisia. So that gives them such a solid bloc, but they still have to form a coalition there. They're not majority. So at least that restricts them to some degree in terms of who they can form coalitions with, and et cetera. So I'm hopeful. If what worries me more is the Salafists who will try to pull them to Muslim Brotherhood to more extreme. I think the Muslim Brotherhood is willing to make compromises despite its
But the Muslim Brotherhood are the ones who are opposed to any form of constitution being drawn up, aren't they?
Well, you know, again, if they're only 30%, they're still going. There might be a solid bloc, but they still have to form coalitions, and I think they can be. I think they can be talked to. I don't think it's a totally hopeless.
And the fear is if the Muslim Brotherhood does get into power, I guess the fear for the army is that they will be taking revenge for all the years when they were kept out of power.
That's absolutely clear. Just one comment. Remember that the chamber is going to be 2/3 coalitions or whatever,
right,
and 1/3 in the independents.
Who
and
can
within
be
the independents, there are
people.
Muslim Brotherhood
Right.
people.
Oh, independent too, right?
You see,
but there are also Mubarak people in the independents too.
When you see the chart
people.
that we've seen now, that Laura's shown us,
yes,
how do you want the man in the street to understand who's he going to vote for?
Yes, sure.
impossible to understand.
Well, it's even more complicated
All
than
this
the
is
chart.
happening much too quickly for the layman.
Sure.
Much too quickly.
But the alternative is to delay the political process, and as we've already discussed, that's causing the problems that we're seeing now. People are worried.
The SCAF doesn't want to delay. The SCAF doesn't want to delay. Why? Because obviously they have formed some sort of crypto alliance with the Islamists. They know that today the Islamists are going to get a very high number. So they're not losers right now. The SCAF wants the elections right now.
So the idea is to keep the Liberals out,
the Liberals
keep
are
Mohammed
not yet
al-Baradei
enough
out.
organized
enough.
to win the elections. They would be someday, because there are a lot of Liberals. When you see Tahrir today, the images that we see, it's not only bearded people, it's not only veiled women, it's Liberals as well. The Liberals have started the movement. So I think the advantage of the SCAF is to try to hold the elections on the 28th, understand for their own benefit what is the scheme, what's the percentage of Islamists, what the percentage of liberals. They really want to understand what's going on.
All right.
And at the same time, they're cracking down on the liberals and on the youngsters and putting 12,000 people into military trials in prison. I mean, this is impossible, incredible. What sort of democracy?
Do you think the elections will take place next week as planned?
I find it hard to believe. If Tahrir continues like that, I find it hard to believe.
Okay. All right. We'll have to leave it there. Myra Mahdi, many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much.
Paul Gardner, thanks to you. Alfred Raouf in Cairo, thanks to you as well. Heba Fatma Marief, and of course François Picard, all in Cairo. Apologies for the sound problems during that programme. And just to remind you that some news has just come in that it looks as though the Egyptian cabinet has handed in its resignation to the Supreme Military Council, the ones running the country in Egypt right now. All of this just a week before elections are due to take place. Thanks for watching. I'm Laura Baines. I'll be back with you with another debate at the same time tomorrow. Good night.